What's going on, family? How we doing today? All right,
Good.
here it
Yeah.
is. The long anticipated and awaited 5 levels of leadership, part 1. All right. So today we're going to talk about level 1 of the 5 levels of leadership. Now, I have my two co-hosts with me here today. All right. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves. All right. So we'll start from the top with Richard and then we'll go down to Ryan. Richard, go ahead. Introduce yourself, my friend.
How you doing? So Richard, I saw in the United States Army, 19 years. Just glad to be here. Thank you, Oz, for extending out an invitation to work on this with you. Um, I'm at the point in my career where I think that I can give some feedback and in life in general, just be a positive influence to those seeking a little bit more information or education when it comes to um, how they lead people. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to having this discussion.
All right, my brother. I appreciate you coming on here joining us. And then my Canadian brother. All right.
Yeah,
Hey,
man.
me and Ryan have been going back and forth for quite some time, and I'm so excited that I was able to get him to join us here. You know, the same thing with Richard, but you know, me and Ryan, we've been talking about this, and finally it's gotten here so that my brother can get up on here with us and share a little bit about himself. So, hey, my brother, go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll get started right after that. All right.
All right, man. First of all, I want to say thanks so much for allowing me to be here, and especially as a Canadian, like for any audience that wonders like why the guys start talking slow, it's just because they're trying to be nice to me so I can keep up with the rest of you. You know, it's a Canadian thing. But yeah, anyways, I'm really glad to be here. I'm a lifelong student. I'm not too much of to boast about who I was, and to be honest, there's not much to boast about. I did some Army Reserve infantry, and then I moved into combat engineers in the regular force in Canada, and I've done some stuff on the side. But generally speaking, I'm a lifelong student. I went to university, and I haven't stopped learning. It's become a passion of mine. So why me and Oz became friends is because we have that same passion. We just can't get enough of the good stuff, and yeah, so that's why we're here now. We're both interested in the same book, and we decided to share our thoughts on the book together. And of course, Richard's along with us here, so this is going to be a really good experience for all of us, and hopefully the first of many. So
Once again, my brother, hey, I thank both of y'all for joining me in on this, and it's gonna be great. So let's go ahead and break this thing down. So the book that we're going to be talking about is John C. Maxwell's 5 Levels of Leadership. And what I'm going to say is this: I guarantee you, we will not do this book justice. We're not going to like sit here and give everything away, but we definitely want to share some nuggets. Like we want to share opinions about what we read, and we want to encourage people to go out and get this book, because I guarantee you, like at the end of this book, we're all going to come and we're all going to tell you like how this book, along with others, have changed the way that we view leadership. Now, today, you know, in the past, I've talked about, you know, a way and the way. We have that the way attitude of this is how things are done. All right. Now, there's a problem with that. But before we get into that, we want to talk about the a way and the way. And Ryan has a story that he's going to tell that's going to highlight this. Ryan, go ahead and
yeah,
take it away, my brother.
yeah. Well, it's not a story of my own. It's a story for all of us, and it's a story from the book itself. But like right away, it stood out to me. He brings up two lawyers. I guess he was a student at some point, and he had to go down to some judicial court system to study the process or whatever. I can't remember exactly why, but he ended up going down there and watching these two successful lawyers, and there was they were both known for always winning their cases. It never mattered, you know. And he watched the one, and the one was kind of a little bit boisterous, a little bit loud, a little bit aggressive, you know, and he got the job done. You know what I mean? And then he watched the other guy, and the other guy was like gentle, quiet, respectful, slow. You know what I mean? He did all these things in a different way, you know what I mean? But they both won all their cases. So he's like, what's the common denominator here? And the common denominator was the fact that they were both genuine people. They were genuine with themselves and thus genuine with their cases, and the jury and the judge and all of these other people felt that. So, you know, being a good lawyer, ironically, is being an honest lawyer, you know, or at least being a genuine one anyway. And that was huge, because I think so many times people that are leaders, they just try and idolize and conform to somebody else's perfect version of themselves, but they don't adapt it to their own needs, or they don't take a little from here and a little from there, you know, and really figure out who they are as people. They're too busy following other people to follow their own lead, you know. So that's a huge one immediately, was the genuinity. I mean, honestly, none of us can get anywhere without that. Yeah.
Wow. Richard, what do you have on that?
But he ended up going down there and watching.
Richard, are you there? Okay, so my brother's having some connection issues, but he'll chime in once his connection comes back up. Now, you know, we all agree that this was one of the things that we definitely needed to drive home. And you know, the main thing that I like, the point that I saw that I wanted to drive home was that it wasn't about finding the specific way. It was about finding your way. Like, you know, we teach people things, and when we teach people things, we don't teach them things so that they can do it like us. We teach them things to give them parameters and to give them like a like basically ingredients. You know how you make a cake, or you make a dish at home, and when you make that dish and you get the ingredients, like you get the family's ingredients, there may be something in it that you don't like. And you might want to just take that one little thing out so that it don't taste like that. And now it tastes the way that you wanted to taste. And that's what, you know, teaching and learning is about. I heard somebody say one time that a teacher's job isn't to tell you what to think, it's to show you where to look. They're supposed to just present information to you so that you can go and find that information, and you develop, you know, you come to your own opinion about what it is that you're learning. They're not supposed to sit there and shape your brain. Hey Richard, you want to go ahead and jump in, my brother, and tell them what you thought about the lawyer story? Like, what was your input on that?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Perfect, brother. Perfect. You coming in loud and clear.
Sorry about that. I had to switch platforms real quick. Switch my devices. Yeah. So when I was looking at that story in specific and how I relate it to leadership in general, and that genuine thing that Ryan was talking about, like, it doesn't matter where you're at in your career, where you're at in your organization. People are drawn to leaders that are genuine and they care about the people. And in saying that, those two lawyers, you know, I've been that aggressive non-commissioned officer that, you know, at the lower level where I barked a lot and I thought that was the right way. And then through knowledge and experience and a lot of great mentorship, moved over to, you know, there's no reason to bark. It's just, you know, be genuine with people, take care of them, and they're going to take care of you. So, and that's really what I took away from that, is that you don't have to be a certain way in order to be a leader. You just have to be genuine in your actions.
Man, you know what? Hey, the way that this conversation is flowing, we're going to go ahead and skip around, because I think our next topic is definitely going to feed into what we were just talking about. And this is one of the things that Ryan wanted to talk about. So in a lot of organizations, we'll have the motto of respect the position. You know, it's about respecting the position and not the person. All right. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to talk about like how that works for some and the pitfalls of it, you know, the snares that you could possibly fall into when it comes to leading with influence, because that type of leadership doesn't lend itself to, you know, leading with influence. It doesn't, you know, that's because right now we're talking about level one. Level one is positional leadership. These are leaders who believe that their position gives them the necessary tools needed to accomplish the task that they have to accomplish. And the problem is once that position is gone, they no longer are effective, and they're slightly effective when they have the position. So, Ryan, go ahead. That one was you, right?
Yeah. Well, we have a saying in the Canadian Army. We have a lot of females in the Canadian Army. In fact, we have females in the combat arms and have had for many, many years. And I've worked for good female commanders and leaders and the like. But we have a saying in the Canadian Army, and it's respect the rank, not the man. And that basically extends to the civ world. Respect the position, not the person, right? And you know, the problem with that is that like it's institutionalized positional thinking. You know what I mean? And it takes a real natural leader with the real like somebody that either puts in the effort like we're doing here to actually learn how to be better leaders, like for realsies, or just is born with the natural gift to like be the coach of the team, or was always the team captain. But you know, these people like are like, at least in the Canadian Army, it's all based around positional leadership, and in most cases it's just rock paper rank no matter what, and it gets really tiring for most guys. They end up getting out. There's not a lot of career guys anymore, and at least not that many good ones. There are, but not that many, and it's because of that. You know what I mean? Respecting that rank, and you constantly have to find yourself like saluting this person that you don't respect. Now obviously we can't change that, but you know, when that person that receives that salute doesn't understand that they need to change themselves to earn that salute, or for somebody to want to give it to them, you know what I mean? It's a whole other game. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And what I would say is that I believe the three of us, now we haven't talked about this, but I'm pretty sure they'll agree. But what we're doing right now, it isn't to change current leaders' belief systems, it's to mold the ones that are coming up through the ranks next. You know, because like when people have their minds made up, their minds are made up. You know, you can't change it. We can sit here and we can model what we believe right to look like, you know, but we're not going to change it. Now, with that being said, Chaplain Shabazz said this and it made a lot of sense. He said, just because someone is on a different path, it doesn't mean that they're lost. You know, so with that in mind, I just want people to keep that in mind. Like, look, we're not trying to change the way that you think. But if you're looking for something outside of the norms of, you know, the normal parameters, that's what we're here for. We're here to provide a different look. Richard, what did you have on that, my brother?
Yeah. So, just going into that, you know, the military teaches us that the position is the first step, and the leaders that set themselves apart are the ones that see that position as opportunity to grow, you know. And inside of that, like, it's a good starting point. And throughout the book and calling it level one, I completely understand why they have that positional leadership at level one, because it's the basis. Someone is seeing some potential in you to be a leader. They're placing you in the most junior leadership position to see that if you can be successful at it, to keep pushing you forward, you know. And that positional leader, sometimes in you know, just in my career, I've ran into leaders that are positional leaders at the rank of sergeant first class, first sergeant, sergeant major, you know. And I'll call it what it is, because sometimes you run into leaders that have to stay the position they're in when they start a conversation, you know. And the best leaders that I've followed and that I've had mentor me, I didn't follow them because they told me they were command sergeant major such and such. I followed them because they didn't have to say that,
Yeah,
to have influence. And I think, you know, as we move through, you know, the next couple of working groups and we get deeper into it, that positional leadership will show, you know, it'll show itself as a stepping stone and not the final destination.
And, you know, I want to add to that, my brother. So Sergeant Major Garrett Griffith, right? I use him all the time. He don't like me using him because, you know, he's very humble. But I want to use him as an example. When I went to ALC in 2010, he was the first sergeant there. Now, look, there's you got ordnance, you got transportation, you know, you got all these jokers down there. We thought that he was the first sergeant for the entire school.
Yes.
And it wasn't because he wasn't running around bashing people. He was motivated. He was committed. He was dedicated to his craft. And that's the reason why we thought he was the first, because everybody came to talk to him. Everybody wanted to come and talk to Sergeant Major Griffin. And that was because of influence. All right. He didn't lead with fear. He didn't lead with his position. Like, the only thing I remember hearing him say is Roll Tide.
Absolutely.
He come in there, with the Roll Tide, but I understood why he did that, because you have to get subordinates. Well, I'm gonna say teammates, because I don't really like the term subordinates, but you have to get your teammates' minds off of, what they believe to be a bad thing or a situation that they believe to be bad. If you can get their minds off of that, then we can move to something else, because we're shifting that focus.
Yep.
All right. So I think we can roll into the next one. And I believe this was one of the ones that we collectively came up with. So a lot of times you'll have leaders who will go with the aspect of, like, I earned this position. I deserve this. I deserve this. There's nobody better. There was nobody who should have got it over me. And I'm gonna let y'all go ahead and take that one, and then I'll come in on the tail end. Ryan, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'm not sure if I'm jumping the gun on this, but it's another example from the book. I'd like to use it now if it's okay. The example of that female CEO that had the test example.
Yep.
Can I use that?
Absolutely.
Okay, guys. Yeah, there's a really good example in this book of leadership and how to develop leaders underneath you in such a way that you develop the right skills without relying on positional leadership. So what this leader would do is she would identify somebody that she wanted to promote, and she would give them a project to lead, and she wouldn't tell the peers of this individual which one of them was leading. In other words, this person had to lead just based on their influence. They had to lead based on their ability to lead, to be kind, and people would just look at them if they were trying to give them instructions and tell them what to do, and they wouldn't. Telling them what to do wouldn't work, right? Because they didn't have that badge. You know what I mean? That rank. So so anyways, a lot of times they would be pretty frustrated, but she said that they would end up, in most cases, end up figuring it out, leading these individual projects and passing these tests, ended up proving that they deserve their promotion, get their leadership position, and then actually it would be a company-wide celebration. In other words, there would be no question as far as who deserved this position. So it's a really good way of identifying who's got the skills and then helping them to develop those skills long before they even need them.
Wow.
Yeah.
You nailed it, bro. You nailed it.
Yeah.
Richard, what you got, my brother?
Yeah. So, we're Army, we're United States Army, and I see the Army going in the direction that leads into what Fortune 500 organizations are doing now, and we're doing talent-based promotions. We're creating healthy competition, and the way I see it is when it comes to that, you talk about our STEP program. We're trying to identify leaders, select, train, educate, promote. And that falls just into the same thing that was referred to in the book. Is you got to find those high speed PFCs, those private first class and specialists, and give them a task and tell them they got to get all their teammates together and get it done. But don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody they're in charge, and see if they can do it. That's that. And to me, that goes into select, and our ability to identify that and change our systems in the Army to more of how they're doing stuff on the civilian side is actually making us more valuable when we get out, because now we're used to systems that are happening. So now we're not just trying to develop non-commissioned officers, or warrant officers. We're developing people to be successful in life.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what it roots back to is at every level, if we're doing the STEP program the way it's designed, we're identifying the PFC specialists that are going to be sergeants, and the sergeants that are going to be staff sergeants, and pushing all the way forward. And the way I see it, that story lines up with how the Army's doing. And a lot of people don't realize that if all you're learning is how the Army is selecting leadership to progress through the ranks and not relating how that is being done on the civilian side, what are you setting yourself up for after the Army? So, you know, and I love that the book lent itself to something that we're just recently changed to in the Army. So,
Hey, my brother, I appreciate that because I totally agree. I totally agree. And I thought it was interesting because like we're all making a lot of the same connections, and just for everybody to know, the three of us have never met in person.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
never met in person, but I think it's very interesting how we're making a lot of the same connections when we read
Yeah.
this book. And what Richard was just talking about was one of the same things that I believe in. Once I started reading John C. Maxwell's books, I'm like, you know what? It looks like the Army's moving in this direction. Like they're definitely moving towards influence and away from positional authority. Like there are times where is going to be required, but there's way more times where leading with influence is required than positional authority is. And
Yeah.
the thing that I took away from it was like I didn't think it. I'm looking. I'm like, you know, there's five. He has 5 levels of leadership, you know, on the enlisted side, and we have like 6 different levels.
yeah.
Like it's scary how close the two are. And
Yeah.
then when this is definitely gonna take us into our next point. But one of the things he talked about in the book, like there's 5 levels of leadership, right? And from number 1 being positional authority to level 5, which is you know, you are a trainer of level 4 leaders. Now, what he said was that you can move in between levels depending upon the person that you meet or the relationships that you have with the person. And it's hard to climb those levels, but it's really easy to get knocked down. So
Yeah.
your character has to be solid and you have to be consistent. If you are not consistent and you are not solid, then you're going to find yourself at level 1. All right. And you're not going to, you know, get, you know, your credibility isn't going to get you the buy-in with the people that you need, which will in turn get you the influence. So Richard, you want to go ahead and take this one first, talking about how we can move in between the levels
Yes,
depending upon the person you're with.
absolutely. So, in the book, there's a leadership assessment, and I actually took the time within my section, sport operations section, and gave it to some of my NCOs that are teammates and within my section. I told them, I said, hey, fill this out and be honest. I'm not looking for you to impress me. I'm not looking for you to sugarcoat anything. Just be honest. And I, you know, on the scale, one of the NCOs that I brought on to the team into the fourth SFAB with me, he's known me for 3 or 4 years. He's known my accomplishments. He's known my leadership style. He's known how I take care of people that are under my reach. And with him, I scored a 4. Solid, hands down, no questions asked. I had another Sergeant First Class that's in the section. I scored a 1 with him. Why? Because he came to us right before we did our train up at JRTC, shortly after we deployed. So I hadn't built a relationship with him so he could understand how I lead. And that just goes to show that even within the section, and you know, and this isn't tooting my horn, this is my team, arguably one of the tightest sections in our brigade. You know, everybody that knows the SFABs, we're not huge. We're not a traditional combat brigade. We're a small element. But when people look at to the SPO of the 4th SFAB, they go, hey, that team, they work together at all levels. Why? Because there's no executors. Sergeant First Class is the lowest rank. You know, we got a W4, a couple W3s, and a major. And we all came to the understanding that it was a team. And in that, different leadership values to different ways. I had an officer fill it out, and he handed it back to me, and he was like, hey, you know, and I was a 3 for him, but he outranks me. How do you lead somebody that outranks you? You know, how do you get on that scale? And to me, knowing that it has to be influence through relationships that changes your level per person that you work with. Like your unit, you can't say, okay, well, I'm the first sergeant, I'm a level 4 to my whole company. It's not true. It's just not. Like, you can think you're the best leader in the world, but it's not just where you see yourself as a leader, but it also is where where your teammate or the subordinates, we like to say in the Army, but where those junior people see you as their leader. Are you reachable? Are you attainable? Can they reach to you for support? And that's really what I took from it. Is like, you got to be it, and you got to realize that if you don't work on the individual level with each person that you're trying to lead, you'll never move out of one.
And it's interesting because I just had the words team and group put to me in a interesting way. So based off of, like, from a management standpoint, a team is a group of individuals who are all working towards the same goal. Like, they have one singular goal. They're all working towards the same thing. A group is a whole lot of people who have multiple goals to work in different directions. But because of my bias and how I was taught that, you know, one is bad, one is good, I would have never thought about it that way. But that was a bias that I had because that's what I was taught. I was looking at team and group as good and bad instead of, you know, being appropriate for certain situations, depending upon how you apply them. So I thought it was very interesting. And to also, to add to that, when they went into the point and they started talking about uh organizational structures, you know, like you have, and the same thing with managers and leaders. Like, we've taken the word manager and made it like taboo. It's a nasty word. And I know what it was. There was an admiral, I can't remember his name, but he said, you lead men into battle and you manage problems. That's what he said. It was an admiral. I can't remember his name. But after that speech, I felt like that put a very nasty stigma on the word management. Now, the new conclusion that I've come to is this: you can lead without managing, but you can absolutely not manage without leading.
Mm.
All right. So,
Absolutely. That's a
hey,
good one.
Ryan, you want to take a swag at that last one? I know I was kind of long winded. Sorry about that.
No, that's good, man. I love everything you guys say, to be honest. That's why we're here, man, is to get into these. You know what, man? Just what Richard brought up, man, it made me think of something. Well, first of all, right, we all know, at least the theory is that a leader unites, right? Not divides, you know. And then we're learning about level 1 leadership, that we know that level 1 is positional leadership. And we know that to move into level 2, you know, you have to have the support of people, right? Now, you know, without naming names, and really you just can say politician. You don't have to name names. They're all kind of the same. Just depends on who you pick, right? But basically, it's amazing that we have world leaders all throughout the world, in every country, not just America, every single country, that really don't actually leave level 1, or they leave level 2 or level 1 in areas, you know. Now, what Richard just brought up really made me think about this, you know, because to some people, a politician might be a level 5, like a god, you know, or a level 4 or level 3. We'll get to that when we get to that. But maybe the goal of a leader is to unite, is to get those 5s across the board. You know what I mean? Now, Richard, nothing against what you were doing, because you said new guys were coming in all the time, and you know, you're working within a system, right? But it's never going to be perfect. You know what I mean? But like, to win an election, you have to win the majority. Well, maybe to be a real leader, you know, you have to win the majority, and you have to unite the majority, and this has to be done in a genuine way. Getting back to what we were speaking about earlier, you know, so that's food for thought there. But yeah, a lot of this is based on the perspective of the individual, so it comes down to really winning people's hearts and minds and changing their perspectives, you know.
At anyone who goes out and they're going somewhere and they don't purposely have people, like, people are following them on purpose, They're just a person on a walk. They're not leading. So just because people are being forced to follow you, that doesn't necessarily make you a leader, and a lot of his stuff is based off of an influence standpoint. And like I said, I get it. There's a time and a place, and this isn't about good or bad. This is about effectiveness. Like what is most effective in the situation that you have. And I've shared my story from with Chief Cook, CW4 retired Chief Cook, and I was in the same boat. Like that was a wake up call for me. Like I went down to the motor pool, and he explained some things to me. He said, we didn't really need more leaders down here. He had plenty of leaders, and I'm like, well, I ain't got a job. I need a job. He's like, well, Green, there's another conversation we got to have. He said, look, check this out. We don't lead the way you lead down here, just like that. And I'm like, okay, what do you mean, Chief? He said, well, we don't yell at our soldiers. We don't scream at them. We're in a hostile environment as it is. We don't need to make it a hostile environment inside of the motor pool. So my immaturity, my response was, well, Chief, you know what? My soldiers shoot the best. They perform the best at PT. They know their jobs. They look like soldiers. I got the whole total package. They're going to be the smartest. He said, well, Green, you know what? You're right. But here's the thing, though. Do you think there's a way that you can get after all of that without having everybody hate you? And that was a wake-up call. That was a wake-up call. And that's what I'm saying. Like, Chief Cook was a big John C. Maxwell fan. He was ahead of his time. This was what, 2007? He was well ahead of his time. And this is the way that he led. So just going back into that, like, look, just because you are forcing people to follow you, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're leading. You're forcing it. You're forcing it. And the thing that I missed out was that he made me realize was that we can shape our leadership into whatever we want it to be, but if you can shape your leadership, why don't you keep shaping that thing until it gets into the position that you need it to be for the people that you're actually leading? It's a malleable thing. So I think this is going to take us into the next point. All right. And our next point is we're going to talk about the pros and cons of level 1 leadership, positional authority. Who wants to take it first?
Richard, please do.
Yeah. Okay. So I this is one of the ones that I seen that really opened my eyes to some things, right? So in level 1, when they talk about pros and cons, one of the best pros about level 1s is that the individual has now been recognized inside of that organization for having the potential to lead at a level in that organization. And in saying that, the pro to it is you're given that opportunity to lead. That a leader somewhere in that organization looked at you and said, you know what, he can lead in my organization. Let's give him a shot. And it starts with that level 1 position. And that opportunity is like, I don't know how to verbalize, but it's priceless, because to me, and I relate a lot of what I do because, I had some time before the Army where I was in some leadership positions within the trades. And really what it comes down to is wherever you're at, whether it be in the military, on the civilian sector, when you have a CEO, a sergeant major, a first sergeant, a project manager, whatever it is, and whatever situation you're in, if they look at you and they say, Richard has the potential, Ryan has the potential, let's give him that position and see what he got. And if you don't take that and turn it into a pro instead of a con, and the pro would be looking at it as an opportunity to learn the position, grow as a leader, test what you think you know about leadership, and keep moving forward. Like, it talks about that in the book. And it's like the people that stay at the level 1, they're on the con side of it, where they don't see it as opportunity. They seen, okay, well, I'm here now, but where are you? Like, ask yourself that question. Okay, you just received an entry-level leadership position, whatever organization you're in. And if your attitude's, I'm here now and I have the position, are you ever going to get away from that level one of leadership and positional leadership. So that's a pro and con that kind of went together. So that's what I took from that one part.
Okay. Ryan, what you got, my brother?
Yeah, it's funny. Every time Richard speaks, I get ideas, man. Richard, I love when you talk because you help me think. I was thinking, man. I know somebody. I'm not going to name names, but yeah, I'm close to him, as in my family. And there's been a couple times in life when he got demoted after promoted. And he didn't get demoted because he stood up for his inferiors or whatever, subordinates or team. Sorry, but he actually got demoted because he got too comfortable, right? So he got into that position, and he got it because people liked him. They saw all the stuff in him, and all of the qualities, those 4 or 5 qualities that are mentioned, were there. His ability to develop himself as a leader and find out who he is and all that stuff. But leaving early is an option when you're a leader, and what happens is you start leaving early all the time. You know what I mean? You start going to get a drink at 3:00 in the afternoon, and guess what? Your staff knows. You know what I mean? Everything is seen. You know what I mean? The irony is that when people go from that hourly wage to the salary civvy side, everything relaxes. You know what I mean? Because they don't have to make that hourly wage anymore, so they're not fighting for that hour. But those people on salary that put in that overtime anyway, those are the people that really matter. Now, there's not a lot of good companies, and there's not a lot of good leaders in those companies to even make people want to do that. But if there was a good company, like we've seen examples, like, I'm not a big Apple fan, but like clearly people believed in that and worked very hard. But yeah, like to get basically when you're getting into this position of independence, you know what I mean? When you're in that position, you have to prove that you deserve that independence by proving that you have the discipline to still work. It's nothing more frustrating than seeing who goes to the gym and who doesn't. It's a little bit different when people are going at different times, but when you know that your commanders are not fit, that kind of thing, right? So those are important points to bring up for sure. But yeah, I guess that's what I had on that.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, my brother. So one thing that I want to add is I'm going to add some stuff from a couple other books that I've been reading as well. So there's another book I was reading called Learning How to Lead When Not in Charge. And I just thought it was fitting. Like, these 2 books fit together. Like, you should get them as a pair because they both complement each other and they fill gaps. Not as if there's very many gaps, but they fit together very well. And one of the things they were talking about in Learning to Lead When Not in Charge is this analogy they used, like the hall pass. So remember when we were in school, like high school, middle school, whatever, you get the hall pass, you go to the bathroom, whatever happens when you got the hall pass is cool. Ain't nobody questioning you. You got the hall pass. Well, positional authority is that hall pass. Yeah. And the problem with the hall pass is if you ain't got the hall pass, now you're finna get in trouble because people are going to start asking questions. Now, what they talked about was another example that they used was they talked about like kindergartners. When kindergartners are in school, they wait their turn to become the line leader. All right. So as they're waiting their turn to become the line leader, they're not learning to lead. They're just waiting. And a lot of times you have a lot of leaders that do that. Like, they miss opportunities to learn how to lead because they use that attitude of, you know what? They didn't pick me. I'm not in charge. So let the whole thing burn down. That's a very toxic attitude for a leader to have. You can't have that attitude because we're a team. We're a team. You should be working towards one singular goal so that the team can be successful. It's not about making that leader successful. The team needs to become successful, and we do that by working together. So a lot of times they miss those opportunities to learn to lead. And then when they do get the proverbial hall pass, the positional authority, they don't know what to do with it. They're not very versed in leadership because they had all of those opportunities to learn to lead, but they weren't in charge. They kept that attitude of, if I was in charge, I would do X. When I'm in charge, this is what's going to happen. But they never practiced that stuff. All right. Yeah. So y'all got anything to add on that one? Or I think we done beat that one to a bloody pulp, huh? Okay, so let's move on down here to our next one. So the next one we had was that leaders who rely on positional authority, they don't really develop their people.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, who want to take that one first?
Go ahead, Ryan.
Okay. Yeah, they don't really develop their people. Well, I guess from my own experience, I found. You know what? I'll use an experience from the. I'll use an example from the book. He said, if you have a business where you see level threes leaving and level ones replacing them, then you know there's a problem with that leadership, right?
Ooh.
So, but yeah, immediately
Ooh.
you start to see that. Now, I hate to say it, point the finger, but like that's what I saw in one of my regiments that I was in, where all the good guys kept leaving, and all the guys that shouldn't have been there, were like getting positions of authority, and yeah, basically, like it takes a lot of courage and a lot of um, respect, self-esteem to be a leader, right? Like you shouldn't be uncomfortable with people showing talent underneath you. In fact, it should be quite the opposite. This should be great value to you as a leader. Like to me, if you're a really good leader, then you're not good at anything else. You know what I mean? Because that's what everybody else is there for, right? um, but yeah, like I'm not sure if it's one of our talking points. I don't think it is, but it's that king of the hill mentality. Now, you guys know I'm always talking about kings. I love history. I'm big on the whole thing, but like the king of the hill mentality, right? Like what happens when you were that kid, when you were that 7-year-old and you took the hill, right? Well, you start to freak out when you see anybody getting up close, right? So what do? You drop kick them in the face. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what happens, like in a lot of businesses, especially the bad businesses, businesses that would either are going bankrupt or would go bankrupt if they were actually not run by the government. There's a lot of companies that are called crown corporations in Canada, and they would outright be out of business if it wasn't for the taxpayers keeping them afloat. So yeah, basically that's what we have going on here. Is we've got to keep in mind that we need to have the best people in charge of a group and of a business and of an army. Otherwise, like the army is going to suffer, and a lot of good people are going to quit on it, and it takes a lot to get that back. I heard a butler say when he was setting up the tables that you don't lower the standards, because once you lower them, you never get them back. Right now, we are all military people. We understand how important standards can be. So, like, why not raise the standard of leadership and then keep it there, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
Richard, what you got, my brother?
Yeah, so we talked about this when we conversed a little bit before we started this one, and this really brings me back to my younger days in the Army, and we all run into different types of leadership, and people that know me and know my career and my background know that it took me a solid 7.5 years to put stripes on my chest, because one, I was comfortable being that mechanic in the motor pool that can fix everything, and two, my leadership seen that proficiency, and then they didn't push me anywhere else. They didn't, hey, you need to go to the soldier of the month board. They didn't, you need to go to the promotion board. I fast tracked to specialist and then stayed there as a SME on how to fix equipment for my motor pools. And it wasn't until I ran into the right type of leadership that was worried about their subordinates and their development,
Yeah.
and the team being developed. They understood that the faster that the team developed, the more that the team can accomplish. And for me in my career, I own it as much as I say. A lot of people like to reach out and go, "Oh, well, my leadership didn't do this for me." Okay, well, got it. Yeah, that's a fail on their part partially, but you still have to own your side of it. You still have to own that. Why weren't you asking every month once you became available for promotion why you weren't moving forward? Why? So I look at it both ways now that I'm on the top side. I'd like to say on the higher level of leadership structure for the Army, and it always comes back to me when I think about after I put stripes on. I told myself that once the Army decided to put me in the position, that I would always pick up. I would always throw out my winch cable and pull somebody with me always, you know, and I'm a mechanic at heart. 19 years, you know, me and you, Oz, we know the further you go up, the less wrenching you do, and the further from the motor pool you get. But at the same time, it's, you know, that's what it is. Just throw your wrench cable out back, and while you're progressing through and while you're learning, put somebody on it and keep pushing forward and give them the information, because I have an expiration date. I'm not going to do the Army for my life, you know. And if I'm not investing in the people that are going to replace me, then what am I actually doing for the organization? So that's really how I look at it.
That's powerful, my brother. That is so powerful. One of the things I heard John C. Maxwell talk about, he talked about leadership, like why people lead. And he said, usually you have people that lead for two reasons. They're either leading because they want to be needed, or they're leading so that they can develop more leaders to lead more people. And I think that fits right into what we're talking about right now, because when you look at leader development, right? And we're talking about like how people who hang on to positional authority, they can't develop. One of my mentors told me a long time ago, he said, you know what, you can't expect from people what they can't give you. And what I took from that was that a lot of times, like, we expect things from leaders that they just don't possess. And we have to be able to identify that and be okay with it and go and get it from somewhere else. That's why it's okay to have multiple mentors and people that you can reach out to. You know, don't allow something that may not have been cultivated in that individual or developed in that individual to slow down your progress. Because at the end of the day, go back to what he said. Are you leading because you want to be needed? Or are you leading so that you can develop more leaders? All right. So let's go ahead. Go ahead, my brother.
Yeah, just quickly, that reminded me of something actually that Steve Jobs said. He said, like, to paraphrase him, he basically said that he's good with he's developed his instincts, you know what I mean? Because time is money, right? So he could sit down with somebody in a couple minutes and decide if he was going to hire them or whatever. But you know, getting back to what you said about talent, you can't really expect people to do things that they weren't designed to do, and that's kind of true. We've all played sports, right? And we've all been at some point in our lives where, like, your team is like in the playoffs, or it's the end of, you know what I mean, end of the season, and it's Hail Mary time, right? And like, you know, even the most shy person will come out of their shell at that point. But it can really, and you guys are combat guys too, right? So you can really surprise you sometimes who sort of cares enough to have that fire inside to speak up and to care enough to motivate these people to get them home again, right? I have a saying, and it comes from experience. We've all been on rifle ranges, and we've all done shooting in the dark. I assume you guys do that. Everybody does it, right? And I remember more than once, man, like jacking up people that were like higher rank, or like telling them where to go, and like it was like my boss, you know what I mean, or even an officer, you know, because like they were doing something stupid and rank was out the window, you know what I mean, and I was just doing my job and they were in my way, you know what I mean. So like you know, when you can't read rank, you know what I mean, like or when push comes to shove, like literally when you're stepping out the wire, that's when you start to see who these real leaders are, you know. And yeah, people can be bigger than their rank. Absolutely.
Hey, I totally agree. And you know what? That takes us into our next topic. So, who's the real leader? All right.
Yeah.
So, one of the stories that that John C. Maxwell shares in like all of his books is about when he first started as the pastor of Skyline Church, and there was a farmer there by the name of Clyde. Clyde had the influence. Clyde had the buy-in. Like, Clyde was a godfather of the church. Like, he was the real leader. It didn't matter who the pastor was. People did what Clyde said. And he used that story to just prove like how a title or a position will not necessarily get you the authority that you thought you had. Like, you'll find out real quick when it comes time to go out here and figure it out. Another thing he talked about, he said, you know, you can always tell a positional leader because positional leaders have issues leading people who are highly intelligent, young, talented. You know, like all of these things, like you would think these are all traits that we want on our teams. We want people that are intelligent. We want people that are young. We want people who are, you know, very smart. And volunteers, they have issues leading volunteers. And all of that's because positional leaders, when they cling to that positional authority, they don't necessarily try to use the influence. So let's talk about that. Who's the real leader? Richard, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can hit that up. So, you know, I'll put this back, and I won't even relate it to the Army because so before I came in the Army, I was in skilled trades. You can say I was a carpenter in California, and
Cool.
you can really see in a trade where time is money and production is money, right? And the guys that were skilled but didn't have to bark. Like they weren't the foreman on the site, they weren't the project manager, they weren't the superintendent. It was that that journeyman or that guy that was close to getting his journeyman's card, that he was out there working towards the team's goal. And everybody followed him and his example, not because he was in a position, but because of who he was and his work ethic. And that's really when I started seeing young, 18, 19-year-old Richard. I saw, that okay, the foreman's in the meetings. He's doing time cards. He's making sure materials are on hand. But it's really this guy that he has on the ground that doesn't have any positions, not getting any extra pay, and everybody's mimicking and following his actions and trying to work as hard as him because of who he is and his character.
Wow.
So let's keep it short. That's where it started for me. And then I used that when I came in the military, and that's how I looked for good leaders. Like who isn't in the leadership position? Who's that extra sergeant that might not have no troops, but he's out there with the troops on the line getting work done.
Nice,
So.
nice. Ryan, what you got, my brother?
Well, again, man, Richard just giving me more and more ideas. Like immediately I think about well, can we develop character? Because this is all about how to build leaders, right? We're not worried about the leaders we've got, but the leaders that we're going to have, right? And, sometimes people really got to make a lot of mistakes before they start to really be honest. And we got people that are above 20 years old that don't understand how to be an adult. And I'm not pointing any fingers because I'm talking to the mirror, okay? I'm 43 years old and I'm just kind of getting it now. But yeah, nothing is more important than honesty. Absolutely nothing. And people that are just exaggerating, you're breaking your own laws. Never mind like the laws of the world or whatever, or any god or that may or may not be right. Like you're not the hero anymore when you're exaggerating. And exaggerating is the start of lying, and then lying becomes like pathological, right? To the point where people end up going to prison and they still won't admit they did anything wrong. They'll blame everybody but themselves, right? So what can we do is, well, we got to develop personal strength and personal character. Like long before we're ever ready to be leaders or even to develop our leaders, we have to help them to be honest people. And how do we do that? I guess they have to be unafraid to admit what's wrong with them, right? Because there's something wrong with everybody. I mean, you guys are pretty well sorted out, but I'm sure that even you have your things that you've had to deal with. I mean, nobody's had a perfect life. Life can be hard, right? So yeah, I guess if I was to put down anything on the table here, I'd say that people, if they want to start being leaders, that long before they even pick up this book, they should start looking into the mirror and start being honest about how much money they have in their wallet. Start being honest about the person they're seeing, that kind of thing. And that would probably be the best way for this world to change, would be with the mirror.
Wow. Hey, that once again, that was powerful, my brother.
Thanks, bro.
So, hey, we coming to an end here. We made all of our topics. We hit all of our topics, the key points that we wanted to hit tonight. This is part 1 of a 5-part series because it's the 5 levels of leadership. I am encouraging everyone, go out, get the book. So when we come back on next Monday, I don't know if it's gonna be. I'll put some out. I'm not sure. I think Freestyle has a show next Monday, so we might not be able to do it Monday. So we might have to push it to a later date in the week. But come out with your book. We just did level 1. get into it, look at level 2, and add to the conversation. Add into the conversation, put some stuff in here, and we'll go from there. All right. So I want to go ahead and give y'all a chance to say some parting words. Ryan, we'll start with you, then we'll go to you, Richard, and then we'll close it out.
Cool. Yeah, I just want to say for anybody who watched this live or who's going to watch this in the future or maybe even long after we're gone, thank you so much for listening. Obviously, we're not perfect people. We're just trying to be better people. And that's why we're all here together. And if you've joined us, then you share our mission. Focus on yourself, stay positive. Don't let your problems get overbearing. If it's bad, fall asleep, wake up the next day. And as far as leaders, this world is full of people that are lying in every way, shape, or form, or telling half truths. And it's about time that we started to develop some real honest people in this world. We used to have a world that was full of codes, more than law, where people would be a part of something, whether it was a church or a mosque or something. But now we barely have families anymore. So I want to encourage you to be good people and focus on yourself and care about the people that are around you. And let's just start making this world a better place. I'm seriously tired of it. And before I die, I hope it's better than the way it is now. I'm really tired of it. So.
All right, my brother. Richard, what you got?
Yeah. So, once again, Oz, I really appreciate you bringing me on. Good leaders seek out people. Great leaders develop people and give them a platform to speak on. So,
Yeah.
Oz, great leader. You're doing outstanding things, my brother. You really are. And get the book. Please get the book. Our ability in the military, the U.S. military, to think that the only writings that we can pay attention to are the ones that the Army or the Navy or the Marines or the Air Force or the Space Force or the Coast Guard publish. That's just the tip of the iceberg. That's our organization's way of telling you how to start leading. You're not going to progress through the 5 levels of leadership if that's your basis of leadership. You have to get out there. You have to be hungry. You have to learn above and beyond what your organization is teaching and bring something to the table. If you got a position at the table, I've listened to other ones and we talk about it. You got that position at the table, bring knowledge, bring something to the table that everybody can take a bite of and become a better person, a better leader. And thank you, my brother.
All right, my brother. I appreciate it. Hey, gentlemen, once we go offline, just stand by for about 5 minutes and we'll take care of some administrative stuff. Here's my last parting shots. Hey, first of all, I got to give a shout out to my brother, the professional SGL, for allowing us to get on here and use this platform. I got to give a shout out to Freestyle. Freestyle. That's my family as well. And I also want to tell everybody, tune in on Saturday. We will have our 2nd episode of Saturday Morning Sizzler. All right. With that being said, look, you are all important. You all matter. And don't let anybody make you feel as if you are insignificant. If you do, reach into the inbox, and I guarantee you we'll have a conversation. At the end of that conversation, we'll change the way that you feel, because nobody should ever be made to feel as if they are insignificant or unimportant. All right. Now, with that said, hey, I love you all. Life is a choice. I'm dependent on you to choose well. Oz here, signing out, and we'll be talking to you soon.